In the star knowledge, there's a belief that the soul has four parts. And when we're expressing an emotion way too much, or we experience something traumatic, this certain piece takes off. And so it always feels like something's missing. Yeah, it feels like something is just, I don't know, geez, I got, I put my clothes on straight today. I got my shoes tied correctly, but something still feels out of place. You know, it's something like that. Yeah, and that's because this one piece left. They have to get it back. See, that's the danger of expressing an emotion too much. Is that this piece could go. One result could be a mental illness, a personality disorder. That's just a possibility. That's not the reason why we get mental illnesses or personality disorders. There's many reasons for those things, but this can play a role. Yeah. For example, the soldiers that went to Vietnam, they saw horrendous things. I mean, every war people see horrendous things, but Vietnam was particularly hellish. Yeah, and so these boys came back, and just something was wrong. The ones who survived physically, something was wrong. So they had to go into ceremony, yeah, and call that piece back. Yeah, this is a part of our. That's from the star knowledge. Yeah. Whereas those that were not native, the way they felt is that after this Vietnam War was over, some of these American soldiers moved back to Vietnam because they felt better there than they did in America. You see, that part of their soul took off, and it's there someplace. That's why they feel better when they're there. It's interesting. Yeah. Like I said, this part of the soul that can leave. A lot of times this happens when you are feeling an emotion too strong. This part of the soul can leave. Or if you experience something really traumatic, it can leave at this time too, because it hits your emotional world, yeah? And it just knocked something, yeah? So sometimes that happens. So what do you do? Well, you have to get it back. And how do you do that? That's that's a ceremonial thing. Yeah, that's done in ceremony, and it's especially we're living in these modern times where all kinds of you know just crazy things are happening that I think a lot of people's this part of their soul took off. And you see people go extreme in their beliefs and to the point of, saying that, wow, those people disagree with us, so God says they must be destroyed. So every citizen of that country is a target. So that this is their justification for blowing up, whatever. That is extreme. And most likely that part of their soul is gone. Yeah, because this it's that's crazy. I can say all kinds of adjectives, but um I don't want to. Because that's just how that is sometimes, You think a lot of times you think world leaders might, they might be this way. They have no problem, telling lies to the public, because this part of their soul's gone. It's somewhere on this earth. They have, it's a sad thing because it's part of spiritual development. Yeah, let's just take a look at somebody's life, for example, just somebody who's it could be anybody, and let's just say that they lost that part of their soul. They live on this earth, they try as best as they can, but what happens when they die? Yeah, what happens when they die? That is a really good question because star knowledge talks about reincarnation, talks about where the soul goes and stuff like that, but this part of the soul that took off is crucial to what happens next. So if it's gone, then what happens to that person? Can he or she continue its soul journey with that part missing? Yeah, good question. These are the kind of things we talk about in my online school. Now, these are what my students study. So that's a question I leave to you, but my students know the answer to this already. It's based on Lakota star knowledge. Yeah, it is a question to think about. Now, but like I said, there in our way, we do have a ceremony to call that back, and when even when we're little children, we're trained concerning this losing this piece, because little children can sometimes get too caught up in emotions, having fun when there's no adults around to supervise, and it is possible that that piece will take off. So that's why at the end of the day, when the children are coming in for supper, that they did a certain thing with their mother to make sure that that piece comes back. So this is what used to happen, yeah, long time ago. And this ensured that that soul, that peace would be there, and that as we're becoming emotionally mature people, that this affects our soul development, and to make sure that we have development in our souls, we make sure that that peace is always there. Yeah, so there's a certain thing that our mothers taught us, this thing when we were little children, so that we can do this every day to make sure it's there. See? Most people probably don't even know this. That even in the Lakota world, there's probably most people that don't even know that this used to happen. Maybe old people, from Rosebud and Pine Ridge and, at Standing Rock, maybe Sand River, they might know this, they might not. That, but that population is really dying that does know about this. And if you go to a ceremony anywhere on any reservation and ask about this, I bet you anything, you're not going to get an answer, or you're going to get an incorrect answer concerning this. Yeah, this is coming from star knowledge, and this is like I said, star knowledge is, not everybody knows it. It is very, very ancient information. Now, let's take a look at today's reservations. We have unemployment like 80%, 90%, depending on which reservation you're at, and you got all kinds of problems. You have a tribal council that is not traditional. Yeah, today's tribal governments are based on the government of Washington, D.C., and it does not work. What it's done is it has divided people within a tribe. It's divided them against each other. So, um, there's nepotism that's rampant on the reservations. That's people that hire their own relatives whenever they become councilmen or something like that. And the jobs are far and few in between. And the council people, they you don't even have to have a certain kind of qualification to be a councilman, to run for election for the tribal government. All you have to have is a pulse. I'm serious. You look at seriously, if you go into a tribal council meeting today, you're going to see a circus happening. Yeah, a bunch of idiots arguing with each other and patting themselves on the back and say, "Hey, you were here for 22 years. I'm gonna give you a award." Hey, okay, and then they'll say, "Hey, I like you, so I'm gonna give you an award too." And then they make this proclamation that this is JoJo Starbuck Day or whatever, and they pose for the camera, and take pictures, and meanwhile they're making $50,000 a year. Well, most of the people on the reservation don't even have a house to live in. I have absolutely no faith in any of these tribal councils because they're only in it for themselves. They are not in it to help the people. They are only in it for themselves. Very selfish people. And then a lot of them, they go on workshops to, wherever there's a workshop on government or business or whatever, and then they fly first class and stay in really ritzy hotels and just live it up, all at the tribe's expense. Meanwhile, people are having problems paying their heating bills back on the res. And what happens when they come back? Absolutely nothing. Yeah, absolutely nothing. They just got a paid vacation, first class. That's the tribal council. I have no faith in them. You know what? There's a really cool video on YouTube of a council session on the Pine Ridge Sioux Reservation where two council people, they're ladies, almost have a fight. You see this in third world countries, yeah, where you see government leaders going up to each other and slapping each other in the face, and this happens on reservation tribal governments too. It's just horrendous. It's just horrible. They are probably the greatest stumbling block to the people. They do not help the people. Yeah, we're going to lose our language here pretty soon. Lakota language is going to die. The tribal governments are not doing a damn thing. They talk about it. Yeah. They'll say, okay, we're going to issue a study to blah, 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 blah. Then that person gets voted out, and then another person comes in. That study just goes in the trash can. Yeah. They only want to make money. They don't see saving the language as important. So the tribal councils are also killing off our language. Yeah, this is this how it is. They're our greatest obstacle. They're supposed to be taking care of us, and they're only taking care of themselves. That is the problem. Yeah, I think they need to be obliterated. Really, I think the tribal governments need to be eliminated. Okay, now I didn't mean to go into a rant about tribal governments. I'm just telling you the situation, yeah, of how it is on the reservation. That because of this, the economic development is not happening at all, and you have all kinds of problems. And I don't want to discuss, how that happened, or because there's many reasons why. There's historical reasons, and there's also political reasons. Yeah, like for example, Most reservations that are federally recognized, they get a certain budget from Washington D.C. to run their tribe. However, when the American economy starts to crash, well, the American government has to cut programs. And a lot of these programs affect poor people, not just on reservations, but all over America. And as a result, less money comes to the reservation. So that means programs that used to be there to help people are, do they have limited funds, or maybe they don't have any funds and then they close. Yeah, so that makes the situation worse. So you have a welfare state, where people depend on welfare to survive, and when they do find a job, the job pays so low that it's better to stay on welfare. You can feed your family if you're on welfare. If you have a job at minimum wage, you end up, some of your money goes to tax and oh, I forgot what that's called. And then whatever money you have left over, it's sometimes it's not even half what you got when you were getting welfare benefits. So a lot of times people don't want to work because they can make better money being on welfare. That's crazy, but that's how it is. Yeah. So it leads to all kinds of problems, and one of them results in alcohol. Yeah. Now, when I was a little boy, growing up in the town that I did in Dupree, South Dakota, in the 60s and early 70s, maybe there was, a town drunk, or, there was this one guy. What was his name? Wilbur. Yeah, Wilbur was his name. Wilbur Dupree was his name. In fact, his last name was Dupree. When it was so funny to see this guy drunk. Yeah, he was the town drunk, meaning not hardly any Indians got drunk in that town, just very few. But this Wilbur is always drunk for some reason. And it was always funny to see him because he would be staggering around and he'd have his hands in his pants trying to stand up straight and he'd be rocking back and forth. This is in broad daylight, yeah? Shocking back then, yeah? And then he'd walk for a little while, then he stopped and he'd start talking. Nobody's there, he's talking, yeah? As a little kid, that was funnier than hell. Yeah, it's like, Jesus, this guy's like a circus clown or something. Yeah, but all that time, maybe he had a mental problem. Yeah, he's standing there. But as a little kid, see, we didn't see people with mental problems back in those days, or we didn't know they had them. Because we're just little kids. We just thought this guy's funny when he's drunk. Yeah, and that was the entertainment. Then there was a house where there was a family that these are adults. Now there's no children here, just adults. They would get drunk maybe twice a month, and so that was the entertainment. Yeah, sitting outside, away from their house, just watching, see what happens. But that was just one house. Yeah, and then I became a teenager, and now the older kids, the kids that were 6, 7, 8, 9 years older than me, now they're starting to get drunk. And new families are moving in. These families they don't have jobs, so I guess they're welfare. Yeah, so they're getting drunk on their welfare money. And now we start seeing people that we know personally getting drunk. So now we see more drunks. Yeah, and then we moved out of that neighborhood. That neighborhood was going to heck. Yeah, and you just saw more and more people getting drunk, and people that and then people starting to be your own age. 13-year-old guys getting drunk every weekend, and these guys come from families whose parents did not drink. They just started doing this because, the older kids were doing it. But their parents didn't drink. Or if they did, they only drank on weekends at the bar. but they didn't drink at home. Okay, but now the people who are my generation and a little bit older, see, they're drinking more. And now, they start having babies, and the ones who, they get their own tribal houses or whatever, and they're drinking in front of their babies. Now these babies today would be like in their mid 30s to upper 40s today. Yeah. And see, these babies, they saw their parents drinking all the time. And so now these people that are 30 years old today, they're doing that too. And now their kids are seeing this. So their kids are seeing their moms and their grandmas getting drunk frequently. Makes you wonder, where is that leading to? Yeah? So these children are growing up in homes that there there there's something missing. Yeah, these children, some of them might be molested, because of the boyfriends. Um, there might be physical abuse because mama's boyfriend is not the daddy, and the daddy doesn't like the father of this child. So this child will take the abuse from, mama's boyfriend. That kind of stuff happens. So, yeah, I'm thinking here, okay, looking at this, how is it that it got this way? I mean, there's all kinds of reasons that are possible, but I start thinking about this part of the soul that can take off because people from my generation, there was just very few of us that know about this activity that we were taught as children. I was taught this by my mother. I know this, yeah, but not everybody was. Yeah, the my friends who are my age, not all of them know about this practice. Yeah, not all of them do. I'm one of the very few who does. So my friends who started drinking and for whatever reason, peer pressure or whatever, I start thinking, okay, what if that part of their soul took off? Yeah, and now they're having children. How can you be an effective parent when that part of your soul is gone? Okay? Now, these children are not feeling 100% loved. And it's not because the mom and dad drink, if the dad is even around. It's not necessarily because of that. That does play a role. It does play a role, but there's another part. It's because part of that soul is missing. So she can't really effectively love her children. So they see this as normal because that's all they know. Now they grow up and the same thing happens to them. They lose that piece too because they weren't taught as children how to maintain that. And their mothers were not taught that either. Let me put this in a more linear way for those of you that are linear thinkers so you can understand this a little bit better. Is that let's take somebody who's my age, okay? And that person um, was not taught how to maintain this part of the soul, okay? So as a result, he loses it, okay? Now he has a child. And since he doesn't know about this, the child doesn't know either, okay? So the child is not really receiving that fullness of love that it deserves, okay? Because that its parent lost part of its soul. But the child doesn't know this. So that what the child receives, that child thinks that that's normal. Now, as he's growing up, see, he's never taught this either. He doesn't know about this part of the soul that we're supposed to learn how to maintain. So he ends up losing it. The child ends up losing it too. But he doesn't think anything of it because, he grew up this way. So now that child is 30 years old today. Now that child has children and it never learned how to maintain this peace, just like its parents. So it cannot teach its child the same thing. So you have a child, parent, and grandparent. None of them were taught how to maintain this part of the soul. So all three generations lose it. And it continues. And I think that has a really big role in why there's a weird energy on the reservation. Yeah, I really think that plays a humongous role on how that happens. Now, in Lakota, the word for children or a child is wakanja. It has the word waka in it, which is a sacred, life-giving energy, is what that is. That's waka. The reason why the word waka is in there is because of this thing that we're supposed to do, that we're supposed to maintain this part of the soul. And then we teach our children to do the same thing. So they teach their children the same thing. This is why that word is wakanja. Yeah, that's the reason why. So now you know what wakanja means. Yeah, now you know how come it has that meaning. Now you know the meaning behind it. They're supposed to learn to maintain something that concerns this part of the soul that can leave. And I think that since this is not being taught, this is why things are really messed up. Not only on the res, but in this world. See, this is a star knowledge belief. And I was very fortunate in that my mother knew this, so I could learn it. This is a very, very ancient custom. It doesn't come from the Lakota ceremonies. It has nothing to do with the pipe. This custom is hundreds of thousands of years old. And this is part of living that star knowledge way, taking care of the four parts of yourself and finding peace in your life and learning from difficulties and enjoying blessings, communicating in a healthy way, receiving communication in a healthy way. The only way you can do that is by maintaining that part of your soul that can wander off. If you let that go and you don't get it back, you're going to have problem keeping this living the star knowledge way. So that's a really old belief. Yeah, a lot of people don't know this one. And this is what the church is called evil. This is what the church is, they said this is from the devil. And this is why we are heathens. This is why we are savages. That was their excuse for trying to stop us from believing these kind of things. Well, it didn't get to me. Thank goodness there were no Catholics where I lived. There is today, but not much when I was there. Yeah. No, it's the family. Yeah, it's the family that still practice these things. And see, the thing is that a lot of times those who know about this, they don't know the reason why. They just do it because it is tradition, but they don't know the reason why. But they know it's important, so they do this with their children, and they teach this to their children. This is part of parenting. Now, what part of the soul am I talking about? I can't give that out here, yeah, because there's people listening to this show. I appreciate everybody listening to this show, but there are some that may take this and do something with it that could be really unhealthy, that could lead to their own downfall. And so, because I have compassion for them, I am not going to give them that possibility. Yeah, but those of you that, maybe you know somebody that knows star knowledge, ask them about this. Yeah, but this is what my students learn. Yeah, these are the kind of things that my online students learn, and they earn this knowledge from me. Yeah, they really want to learn these things because it enhances their lives. My students are not trying to become Indians. My students are proud of who they are, and they're just learning about our culture because it gives them another perspective. And when you have another perspective, you see more in life than you do with just your own perspective. That's how my students do that. Yeah. So if you're interested, in becoming a student of mine, I welcome that.